Hi, we're Mel and Missy, respectfully a clinical mental health therapist and Fear Fighter life coach. But it goes beyond that. We are representatives of you.
Trash It is a brand that helps women focus on their next level of freedom by getting rid of the emotional garbage in their lives, whether it's toxic relationships, thought patterns, stigmas, etc.
We represent mothers and single mothers, daughters, wives, and divorcees, business professionals, entrepreneurs, and even Christians and ministers of the gospel.
We're trashing it all.
Hey, we are back, and as you can see, we look totally different from our first recording. Wouldn't you say, Mel?
Absolutely. So I have on a different shirt, and you came back with a whole haircut, lipstick on, and an outfit that looks like you went out on a date.
Hey! But nevertheless, we are back. We do know that this is part 2.
Yep.
Of our podcast of domestic violence, being a domestic violence survivor myself. We had some very in-depth conversations, and so we decided to make it a part 2 just because of the conversations, and so many conversations can come out of just this one topic. So we decided to do that today.
And so I want to start back with where we were segueing in the last recording, which was the topic of domestic violence and how different it can look, right?
Yes.
And how when it comes to things such as sex within the relationship.
Absolutely.
Sometimes I think as women, we overlook that and we don't really realize that falls, sometimes into the category of domestic violence, especially when it's, I'm having sex with someone because I'm afraid they're going to hurt me or hurt my children.
Exactly.
Or it's forced, or it is coerced. And even if the answer is no, the no turns into a yes, or the no turns into silence out of fear.
Absolutely.
And so, that was kind of where we were segueing. And so I really want, if we can, I would definitely like to get back into that. That's deep.
It is deep. And you said it earlier, no is no. But no in situations like that can mean death for you.
Mm-hmm.
No can mean another argument. No can mean another fight. So my no, unfortunately, now turns into a coerced yes.
Mm-hmm.
Which deep down, I'm like, no. But when you tell someone, they don't believe it happens. Why? Because you're married to that person.
Right.
And so now you have a no, and now you have a spouse, and it just doesn't make sense.
And nobody believes you.
And thank you. Nobody believes you first, nor does it make sense.
Mm-hmm. I think it can be hard to even wrap your mind around, even when you're in the situation.
Exactly. Excuse me. It's very hard because, again, it goes back to blaming yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't speak up for myself. I said no. No is no. But when somebody is in your head, when somebody is choking you, when somebody is ready just to, and I call it tag in your head,
mm-hmm.
What do you do? Out of fear.
Right.
Out of fear, my no becomes now a forced yes.
Mm-hmm.
Out of fear. But I'm looking like the bad person. Or it's always like the young girl that wears a short dress and something happens to her. Well, look what she had on.
Mm-hmm.
She asked for it. Really?
Mm-hmm. Just in hearing you say that, I will never forget a conversation our oldest daughter and I had when she was in high school. And for those who know our oldest daughter, you know, she's tall, right? I'm 5'8.5", but this chick is like 5'10". She's 5'10" and built. And even then, you know, she was built. And I remember her coming home being so upset because they had been called into the auditorium. I think it was the girls had been called into the auditorium. And, you know, the staff of this particular school wanted to have a conversation with the females, right? The female students. And it really was, I think, out of concern. And I think, you know, the goal was, let's have this conversation because we need you all to understand why we don't want you wearing jeggings and why we don't want you wearing the tight shirts, right? Why we don't want you wearing the fitted clothing. And so the statements were centered around that. And it was because, well, we don't want to give our young men something that they are going to want to touch, right? So the consensus was, so like if you're wearing jeggings or if you're wearing these tight fitting clothes, then you're inviting trouble. And she was so upset, and she said, she's like, why do I have to conform when they should just know to not put their hands on me? Like, why is it up to me to do something different instead of them knowing how to respect a woman? I had no argument. Right? Because my argument with her was always, listen, at 5'10", you can't wear what 5'5" Karen wears.
That's right.
Because number one, Karen is Karen, and she's 5'5". Right. So when you put on shorts that come to your fingertips, which is a rule of school, when you put that on, well, it doesn't quite look the same.
No, it doesn't.
Right. That's like me in a short dress. It's all legs. So it has a different look.
Mine's all belly.
Right.
But I digress.
but seriously, it has a different look. And so I think that goes into what you're saying, where we constantly feel like it's our fault. So how would you say, in the confines of trashing that stigma, even as it relates to coerced sex within a marriage, how would you say you work through that? Like, how did you reach your freedom with that?
Golly. It had to be birthed out of me.
So when you say that, what do you mean?
My child. Had to be birthed out of me. And I had to see my freedom every single day.
So for those that don't know exactly what that means.
My son is a product of what took place that particular night. My baby boy, my young man. So my no was a no, but my no turned into freedom. He was my saving grace. He was my saving grace.
How long do you think it took you to realize, right? Because I think a lot of times when we're in situations that are not healthy situations, and decisions are made, we have a made up mind, right? And we have like we have these thoughts. So when would you say it moved to he's my freedom versus he is a product that I have to look at daily that reminds me of pain and that reminds me of what wasn't supposed to have happened?
Probably several years ago.
Oh, man.
And he's good and grown.
Right. Yeah.
I would probably say about 3 years ago.
3
years ago. 3-4 years ago, around that time. Less than 5. No more than 10, but less than 5. I will say that. That would be a fair number to say. Because he is me. He is such a strong young man. And he's very opinionated in a respectful way, but he speaks his mind. And I remember he and we were talking one day, and I said, where do you come up with this stuff? And he looked at me, he's like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah. I said, where does this come from? He said, it comes from you. I am a product. He said, I am a part of you. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And it hit me right there. All this time that I've been carrying that weight, like it was just a release. So I carried him, but he saved me.
I think often in those situations, most women, and I won't say most, but I think a good majority at least consider not having the kid.
Yeah, exactly. I went through that. I don't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
I went through that whole journey of putting him up for adoption. Found a family, everything. Everything. January 26th in Virginia, where it does not snow or ice. If we were here in Indiana or Kentucky or somewhere in a region where you expect it in December, January timeframe, right? I never forget like it was yesterday, January 26th. It was an ice storm. So at that time, I was left with nothing. My phone was cut off. Gas was cut off. We still had electric, but the gas was cut off. Barely had a place to stay because unfortunately, he was not helping. So really, it was just me fiending to survive with these kids, and I'm pregnant. So long story short, he actually comes over to the house to check on us, which to me was odd, but at the same time, it was God sent because I didn't have a working phone. I go into labor. So at that time, had to call the social worker, had to call the adoption agency to let them know, hey, I'm in labor. This is the hospital we're going to. We'll see you there. What else do you say? We'll see you there. I'm getting ready to give my child away because of this situation. Oh, goodness. So long story short, I have the little boy. I hear him cry. Would you like to see him? And I'm like,
oh my God.
I couldn't help myself. I took one look at him and I said, I can't do it. So the social worker and the lady at the adoption agency told me, she said, I knew the day that I met you, you would not be able to do this. And I said, are you serious? She said, yeah, but because I took an oath and it was my job, I had to continue to stay with you.
Wow.
Yeah. And I brought him home. And it has been a journey ever since.
Are you interested in being a sponsor for the Trashed It podcast? If so, reach out to us via email at wetrashedit@gmail.com. I think, if we're honest, it's this transparency. It's moving into this freedom. That's what that led us to Trashed It.
Exactly. It's because it's crazy because it started with a conversation, but a conversation of something that happened to me that I thought was going to take place, and it did not. And I was devastated because I just knew that I was getting ready to get married. And
that was kind of the next thing. And I think the last thing I wanted to really segue into was, so when it comes to domestic violence, when it comes to having been married to someone who was, physically, emotionally, all the things, hurting you. How have you seen it play out in your relationships after that?
Wow. It's so crazy that you say that, because I think the older we become as women, we like to think that we've changed. Yeah. But I'm going to tell you, this pandemic has taught me how to pivot. And it's taught me how to truly take control of my mindset. There was things 20 months we've been in this now, 21 months. I have no clue. It seems like yesterday. I keep saying 2019, but it seems like forever, right? I had to learn about Melissa. I did. And there were some things about me that I liked, some things I did not like. And there were some things I found out about myself during this time. That, it even goes way back. And so when you think and you think about relationships that you've had, whether they are platonic relationships, whether they are romantic relationships, or whether they are just, hey, how you doing type of friendships, it all serves a purpose. But I also had to own up in responsibility in some ways, how I showed up as well. Right. And I think this last relationship, I showed up free with freedom, but I still had some issues on the inside of that, in the back of my mind type deal. Right. Man.
And I'm smiling because I remember a conversation we were having, and you were so militant. It was like, I don't want nobody running me. And I'm glad it didn't work out, because, he was going to be trying to have me at home, and I'm going to do my own thing. Like a whole attitude. A whole attitude, just absolutely militant. And I remember saying that, sometimes there's a difference in realizing that you made it through something. Yeah. But then going the extra and almost vigilant, and being of the vigilante of, this will never happen to me again. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so much so, because I think I said this to you, I said, the man may just care and want to make sure you're home.
Whatever.
Like at a decent hour, and you would be like, ain't nobody gonna ever run me again. I was like, well, that may not even be what he's trying to do.
Well, but that goes back,
right, to because what there's like this defense mechanism.
It is. Oh, very bad.
I don't think you really knew, because to you it was like because you know how you.
I'm a 90s woman, right? I'm a 90s woman. Yes. Yeah. I'm superwoman. I do this by myself. I don't need nobody tell me what to. Yeah. It goes back to that mentality that I had, that I became accustomed to. It was comfortable for me. Very comfortable for me, because that's all I knew in that season in my life.
It's like a fight, the fight and fight or flight response, right?
It is.
So I think for you, he could say, "Where are you going?" And you're like, "Oh, whoa, hold on, been here
I would go
before."
from, yeah, exactly. Mhm. And we don't realize that. And I think
Yeah.
subconsciously, it just like, oh gosh, where'd that come from? But
How are you? How are you able to love?
oh, love who? Myself and individual.
Yourself, and then how were you able to love in a relationship? Third part, did you believe you were capable of being loved?
Wow, I'm gonna stop my video because if I start
You
crying.
better not. Okay.
Oh, you know what? I am going to answer that last question first.
Okay.
I thought I was.
Okay.
I thought I was until life happened. Because when I became, and I know it goes back and forth, and I know the subject matter is about domestic violence, but if you don't heal from what has happened in the past, it will trigger you in your future. And we don't realize this, Mel.
Absolutely.
We don't realize this. And so that's why I rather take that question first. I thought I was ready.
Okay.
I did. I can honestly say I thought I was ready because I had not been in a relationship in a very long time. And I'm talking a romantic, dating, one-on-one exclusive, relationship in quite some time. And, you think that you heal. I think there's always room for improvement.
Right.
And there's always room for growth. There's always room to get better. But I didn't want what I thought was better to make me bitter.
Okay.
And I even do believe that even if our conversation didn't happen that particular time, I probably would have became very bitter.
Wow.
I would. Like
I
I
was
probably
mad
would have
at that day. Oh my God.
I was yes, I was on.
If I would have been in your presence, you probably would have tried to fight me. With
it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. Get out. But you know what? I was hurt. Yeah. But that hurt came from a different place.
I think you thought it was anger. Right? Because I think a lot of times, as I say to people, anger is an easy emotion.
It is.
Right. It's easy to be angry because when we're angry, we get to lash out and fight and clown. But usually anger is a surface emotion.
It is.
And when we really think deeper into whatever it is that's triggering us, normally it's really not anger.
No. I think I was hurt. I was disappointed. I was let down. So many emotions that just came into play. But again, it takes me back to what happened years ago. And so it all goes hand in hand. And the person listening now might be like, well, how does it goes hand? It goes hand in hand because it's a mind thing. And so now I have to constantly keep reminding myself, like, you're more than that. You're more than that. I know what it feels like for somebody to tell you you will never amount to anything and nobody will ever want you. That came from my husband, my kids' dad, their father. And so you talk about, I'm going to tell you this. So I remember one particular time, he has since passed away. And so when I was going through counseling, and the one thing my counselor said, well, have you had a conversation with him? And, I'm like, I don't believe in Ouija boards and that kind of stuff. She's like, no. I'm like, hey, I believe in the Lord now. Get behind me, Satan, right? And she was like, no, she said, I do believe you need to do this exercise. So what she had me to do, I could do it two ways. I could either write a letter or I could put a chair in front of me.
Empty chair. I was going to ask if it was empty chair.
And I love to talk. I'm like, I don't need to write. No. Let me get it out. And I put a chair in front of me. And when I tell you, that was so therapeutic. Oh, I probably went over the allotted time that she told me to do, but I kept doing it and 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 kept going back to the chair every single time. If I felt something, I went right back to the chair because I needed to dump it.
How did you get the courage though? Because, we keep things so tight and we keep it locked in and we don't want to talk about it. So how did you reach that level of freedom? Because I think that's something, I
wanted to show up differently. I didn't want to keep showing up like the old Melissa. I didn't. It was exhausting. It was tiring. It was sadness. Like I can have a smile on the outside. Hey, how are you? But in the inside, I am hurting. I'm in pain. And I'm not talking of physical pain where I have to go to the doctor. No, I'm in pain. I've walked around and I've operated in this for so long. Like I could have the blueprint for pain. The way I was living, I could operate with my eyes closed because I was used to it. That's all I knew.
So I think we could definitely go on and on about this topic because it's such a powerful one.
It is.
And it's one that touches any genre, any demographic, any socioeconomic status. It doesn't have a face.
As always, we thank our listeners for tuning in. We invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Trashed It! Podcast. You can listen to our podcast on various podcast platforms. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, Trashed It! Podcast. And please chit chat with us throughout the week on our social media channels, Facebook at Trashed It and Instagram at We Trashed It.